Okay, Mishi, so here's my story. When I made Aliyah 18 years ago, I looked for a job in my profession in school psychology, and I got several offers. The one really stood out. It was by this woman who had just recently become a menahelet, and she looked me in the eye and she said, "Look, I know you're going to get a lot of offers, but you'll most likely get the worst schools, the ones that no one wants. I know this because that's what happened to me. And when I became a menahelet, I took it upon myself to give a chavaya metakenet, a corrective experience to somebody, and I'm willing to give it to you." I trusted her, and she stuck to her word. Not only did she not give me bad schools, but she let me follow her around as her shadow for several months. She let me go with her when she assessed children, meet with parents, meet with teachers, meet with principals, meet with Gananot, and I learned a tremendous amount about school psychology from that time with her. I also learned her story. She had made Aliyah by herself with 3 teenage kids. She had a very difficult custody battle in America in order to enable her to make Aliyah. But she would talk with such tremendous love about her 3 kids, about her 2 boys, Chaim and Yaakov, and how successful and bright they were, and about her daughter Tammy and how creative and talented and beautiful she was. And we grew close, and I would actually hear her talking to these kids on the phone, because I was with her all the time, and I would hear her most memorably talk with Tommy. Tommy called her all the time and needed help with the most mundane of issues, what to wear, issues which she was having with her rabbanim at Choev, and all kinds of daily, normal teenage issues that she would have with Tommy. But it was a pleasure listening to her talk to her. Eventually, one time, Ruth invited us over for Shabbat, me and my wife and my young daughter, to have a Shabbat meal with them. And so we went and we got to meet her 3 really sweet teenage kids, and the 2 families bonded very nicely. A few months though after that, Ruth got cancer, and within 6 months of learning that she had cancer, she died. Right before she died though, I had my second kid, a son, and with the last weeks of her life, she decided to crochet him a kippah. Although she was in tremendous pain, she crocheted him this beautiful Snoopy kippah, this red Snoopy kippah. And that kippah somehow, first of all, it got onto the cover of Nefesh B'Nefesh magazine. It was also always on his head when he was a soccer star, and when he played for Hapoel Tel Aviv with these red uniforms. So we always had this red kippah, and I would hear the opposing team's parents say, "Look at that blonde kid with the red kippah, look how fast he is," or whatever, and it would always give me tremendous pleasure. And he lost every other kippah that he had, but somehow this red Snoopy kippah, nothing ever happened to. When she died, she left these 3 teenage kids living Party of 5 style in Jerusalem, and I said to myself that I want to be a significant part of these 3 kids' lives. And at the beginning, I succeeded in that. We had them over a lot for Shabbat, and we grew close, and we had great times together. But for some reason, over time, with the years, we stopped having them for Shabbat and stopped being in constant contact with them. I'm not sure why. Also, maybe because I moved to Modi'in. But during that time, my own life smashed into a million pieces. I was divorced, and I was feeling tremendously alone. Modi'in is a place for families, and I didn't have one, and I felt very alone, very left out. And one day, out of nowhere, I got a call from Tommy saying that she's engaged, and would I like to come to the wedding, and that she was also moving to Modi'in. I decided to go to the wedding, and that was a turning point in my life. I had a good time at the wedding, and when they moved in, Tommy married Moshe, who happens to turn out to have been the greatest guy ever. I was no longer alone. They would have me over for Shabbatot all the time. We would hang out together all the time, and my whole attitude changed. And soon enough, I got married, and my wife and I, and Tommy and Moshe, grew very close. And soon enough, Tommy started having children, and we were very close to them. I found a house for Tommy's older brother, Chaim, next door to me, and they all moved in, and we were all close, and I kind of am a significant person in these kids' lives, in these families' lives. One day, I get a text from Moshe on a Friday morning, a very short text. It says, "Please pick up our kids from the gan." My wife and I looked at the text, and we right away knew a few things. We knew that Tommy was pregnant with her third, but that she had some terrible complication with the pregnancy, and she's in the hospital. That was the only explanation for why he would send us such a short text. So I picked up the kids from their ganim. When I got to their older son Liad's gan, the ganenet saw me and said, "Hey, I recognize you. You're from Efrat. You were a psychologist in Efrat." And I said, "Yeah, that's true. I was a psychologist in Efrat." Whatever. She's like, "Yeah, my first year as a ganenet, I was in Efrat." So I picked up the kids. Picked up Liad, picked up his brother. And Erev Shabbat, right before Shabbat, when Tommy and Moshe came back from the hospital to pick up the kids, I told them that I saw their ganenet, the ganenet of their older son, and also happens to be his cousin Chaim's daughter, was a ganenet in Efrat. Now Tommy has this lifelong search for any information about her mom, any kind of shred of evidence, anyone who might have known her. She kind of wants validation to know of her memories, to see if that the person she remembered was a real person. Well, other people also remembered her in a similar way. So she's on this lifelong search and starved for information about her mom. So I told her she was in Efrat at the same time. Maybe they overlapped. So on Sunday morning, Moshe brings their son Liad to gan, and asks the ganenet if she knows Ruth Rand, his son, and Reut, his cousin's grandmother. This part of the story, actually, I do an interview for him. I interview Moshe, and Moshe tells this part, and I interview the ganenet, and I interview Tommy at the end. But I'll just tell you what in brief what they said, and also attach the interviews that I have of them. So Moshe goes to the ganenet and asks this question, and the ganenet starts breaking down, crying in the middle of the gan, shaking and crying. And when she was able to compose herself, she explained that Ruth, it was her first year as a ganenet, and all the parents hated her. They wanted her out. And the only thing that saved her was this psychologist, Ruth Rand, this woman, who gave her confidence and who believed in her, and who assured her that she hadn't chosen the wrong profession, and helped her through all of her adversity. And all the years she had this tremendous debt. She had left Efrat after that year, and she didn't know that Ruth died right away. And she never went to the Shiva and never told anyone, wasn't able to tell anyone about this person who had this tremendous effect on her life. And the realization that she was the ganenet of her grandchildren was overwhelmingly emotional for her. And she speaks about it in the interview. Then I interviewed Tommy, who talks about how when her mom would come home from the ganim, she would say that she could just spend all day listening to the songs, these beautiful songs that they would sing, and how she wished that she had given her a childhood of these beautiful songs. And when Tommy herself had kids in the Ganim and heard these songs, she was thinking, oh, these must be the songs that my mom were talking about, not knowing that it was the exact same song, the same songs from the same Ganenet that her kids were being exposed to. She also talked about this Mishlach Manot that she remembers, that the Gananot made her mom. She was macrobiotic toward the end of her life, and they made this special macrobiotic Mishlach Manot. And you'll hear the interview. In terms of ending the story, you can end it in a number of ways, but one could just be where they are now. Ruth would have had 13 grandchildren. Chaim is a math PhD. Yaakov is a lawyer, and Tommy is a tremendously successful interior designer. But it could end in a lot of ways. So tell me what you think, and I'll send you the link to also pictures of the kippah and those interviews, and tell me what you think. Thanks.